The Indian great Virat Kohli has announced his retirement from Test cricket after a career spanning 14 years, 123 tests, yes, you heard that right, and 40 wins. He posted the announcement on social media saying he would look back at his Test career with a smile. The decision follows just days after his teammate Rohit Sharma also announced he would be stepping down. We're joined today by cricketing pundit Nikesh Rughani, who has more insight on this. How big an impact has Virat Kohli had on Indian cricket and on international cricket?
Well, look, when you look at the history of Indian cricket, there was Sachin Tendulkar and previously Sunil Gavaskar. Once Sachin Tendulkar retired in 2013, all the questions were out. Who is going to be the next great test batter from India? And Virat Kohli came along, and Indian cricket has never really looked back. He's a very different type of cricketer to some of those in the past. The intensity at which he plays has gained him lots of admirers in places like Australia and further afield. And I think what he has done for Test cricket, not only his batting records, but what he has done for the game of Test cricket in India in terms of rejuvenating it at a time where Indian Test cricket audiences were dying down just a little bit post that Tendulkar era, like I mentioned, is nothing short of remarkable. He's always said that Test cricket is the ultimate form of the game, and he's worn his heart on his sleeve whenever he's led the side and whenever he stepped out there as a batter. And I think his legacy in terms of what he has done to rejuvenate Test cricket in India and globally is the thing we'll remember him most by.
Because, of course, he's only standing down for Test cricket. You know, people who don't know so much about cricket won't see that there are different formats of the game. In India, the IPL, which is a shorter format that has had a lot of money pumped into it, has become increasingly popular. But it's Test cricket that he talks about in his resignation statement, where he talks about the deeply personal nature about playing in whites, the quiet grind, the long days, the small moments that no one sees, but that stay with you forever. Let's just go into that further. What did he do for the appreciation of Test cricket in India?
Well, look, as I say, when MS Dhoni was captain, his predecessor of the Indian cricket team, a lot of the focus was on white ball cricket, on one-day international cricket and T20s, particularly once the IPL was formed in 2008 onwards. Virat Kohli then came in and just sort of took everybody back and said, no, this is the hardest form of cricket. This is where we can really make our names and go down in history as legends of the game, providing we put up those performances. And what you are remembered by ultimately as a cricketer is what you do in your Test career, because one-day matches, T20 matches, there's so many of them played that they often blur into one, and people can't quite remember things other than maybe World Cup finals and things like that. In Test cricket, it's not only iconic in terms of whenever India would tour England or tour Australia, or these big series that they play in every 2 or 3 years. It's the grind that he talked about. It's so difficult. I mean, I've commentated on Test cricket around the world, and even as a broadcaster, it's a grind. It's 5 intense days that you've got to get yourself up for, and the come down is so difficult post a Test match, and then to get yourself back up for another Test match and another 3 or 4 in the same series, so difficult. And as a player, that just multiplies times 10 probably in terms of the intensity and the difficulty it is being away from your family, putting in so many hard yards, the fitness you need as well, both physically and mentally. And he has come away as a Test cricketer, having played 123 Test matches, with no regrets. He says he's walking away with a smile on his face. His form with the bat hasn't been as it was sort of pre-COVID. You know, post-2020, his numbers don't stack up too well. Pre-2020, he was on course to be arguably the greatest Test batter India have ever produced. And that's probably not going to be quite how he's remembered now. But in terms of what he's done for Test cricket in India, I don't think anybody has ever had that much influence.
So why now? Because we saw Rohit Sharma saying that he also was retiring. There is, as you mentioned there, a Test against England coming up. Why was this the moment that Kohli chose?
Well, it's a great question. I mean, he's gone with his gut, according to all the reports that we're hearing. And he, as I say, he wears his heart on his sleeve. He's made the decision to continue to play international cricket for India in one-day international cricket, which means he's probably got his eyes on the 2027 Cricket World Cup, which is coming up in a couple of years. And that is going to be his sole focus from now on. He's already won a World Cup with India previously. He's won a T20 World Cup as well. And he perhaps sees that as the perfect way to go out. This is the start of a new Test Championship cycle as well. So the World Test Championship final takes place in June in London at Lord's between South Africa and Australia. India not a part of that. And then that first series that India play post that Test Championship final is against England. So it's the start of a new cycle, perhaps a chance really ahead of the next World Test Championship final in a couple of years' time for India to bed in some new players. But it's going to be difficult because Rohit Sharma, as you say, the captain, has decided to step down. Virat Kohli now following suit. Two vastly experienced players not coming on the tour of England. It's going to be a very, very difficult tour for these young Indian cricketers. But the one thing that India do have is talent in abundance, and they've got so many batters knocking on the door, waiting to get into that Test side. So maybe Kohli just felt it's the right time to give these young guys an opportunity to get into the team ahead of what is going to prove to be a very busy World Test Championship cycle for a couple of years.
But obviously also, being in that team, being such a leader in that team, it's a highly pressurised environment. The Indian cricket fans care a lot about the results of the national team. Do you think there's any chance that got to Kohli and it got to Sharma eventually, or was your sense this was always the plan?
Well, I don't think it was always the plan. I think had things gone well in their recent tour of Australia over December and January of this year, maybe we could have seen both of them on the tour. But Rohit Sharma's last act as an Indian cricketer was dropping himself from the side for the final Test match against Australia in Sydney because his form just wasn't up to scratch. And he said, look, the team's got to come first. And even though I'm skipper, I'm going to drop myself. And Virat Kohli has probably taken a similar decision because his Test average in the last 4 years is under 30. Now, when you look at the greats of the game, you're looking at averages post 50, which is what Virat Kohli was averaging before the COVID pandemic. And I don't know if that's got anything to do with it particularly, but the last 4 or 5 years, he has really struggled for form. Yes, we've seen the odd good innings here and there. We've seen the odd century as well. But overall, his consistency hasn't been there. And I don't think he's quite feeling the fire in his belly burning as it used to. We see him on the field and the intensity that he brings to any Test match that he plays in. Things seem to just be dying out a little bit in terms of that desire, that burning desire from within to play this game. And we mentioned before, it's a difficult grind, Test cricket. And given the form he's in, maybe the lack of desire to go on much longer now felt like the perfect time for him.
And then let's talk about some of the other Indian greats and where Kohli stands. Because, someone like Tendulkar, for example, he seemed to play cricket in quite a quiet way. I don't know whether that would be fair to say. It was quite kind of ordered. It was quite calm. Whereas Kohli, we've seen, when you see him on the field, it's like electric. You can't stop watching the attitude that he has towards the way he plays. Was he a different style of cricketer?
Absolutely. I mean, when you look at Indian captains of the past, and Sachin Tendulkar was a captain of India previously as well, he was a classical Test cricketer, very calm, very gentlemanly, just got on with his game and was absolutely world-class, arguably the greatest batter that anyone has ever seen in the modern era. And when you look at Kohli, you're right, he almost needed to have a fight out there with the opposition or for something to go wrong, an umpiring decision to go against his team, to get himself fired up so he could bring that energy, which sometimes bordered on crossing a line when it came to confrontations with the oppositions and the umpires. But the crowds loved that. It was like watching WWE wrestling, for example. They love that intensity. They love the fire. They love the fact that for so many years, Indian cricket and Indian cricketers were very gentlemanly, didn't really say boo to a goose. And then Kohli came along, Sourav Ganguly a little bit previously to him. But when Kohli came along, they were almost saying to the rest of the world, we're not scared of taking on anyone at any time, in any place. we're going to give it our best out here and we're going to leave everything out on the field. And that's exactly what they did. And under Virat Kohli's leadership, the record speaks for itself. 40 wins as a captain from 68 matches that he led in, second to none.
And just finally, when we talk about Test cricket, which is a form that many people love, but obviously is facing some significant challenges, to lose such an attraction like Kohli, the fact that you won't be able to pay to see him in a Test or watch him on TV in a Test anymore, what does that mean for Test cricket, and how can it produce the next Virat Kohli?
Well, I think there's going to be a lot of disappointed fans, both from England and India, ahead of that 5-test match series. A lot of people were looking forward to perhaps seeing Kohli have one last dance in England, which isn't going to happen, certainly in Test cricket. You're right, he was such a massive influence on Test cricket that there are going to be now concerns over Test cricket, not just globally, but particularly in India. The interest levels with, the star power of Kohli now no longer there. Who's going to step up? I mean, one thing that India do have, as I mentioned, is an array of talent coming through. They have got the likes of Yashasvi Jaiswal, who's had a fantastic start to his Test career, and he's a classical Test batter brought up through the Mumbai batting school, which has produced so many Test greats over the years. He plays cricket properly. We've got Shubman Gill, who's been earmarked as the future Test captain of India. We'll wait and see what happens with regards to that. But there are so many of these guys coming through that you hope one of them just kicks on, finds that same consistency as somebody like a Virat Kohli. It'll be difficult to match his star power because he's one of the most popular athletes in the world, bar none, across all sports. You look at those Forbes lists and he's always at the top. His Instagram following is huge. Maybe we won't find somebody who's going to be as much of a superstar as Virat Kohli, but in terms of numbers and in terms of, people turning out to watch great Test cricket, there are a few guys coming through. So it'll be interesting to see what happens this summer against England.
Yes, certainly big shoes to fill after an extraordinary career and an extraordinary player. Nikesh Rughani, thank you very much for your time. Thank you.